Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Security Repo Podcast. If you've been in security recently and definitely dealing with application security, you'll know that it's very closely connected to DevOps. And connecting this bridge can be somewhat difficult. DevOps teams don't always like to talk to security teams. Developers don't always like to talk to anyone, which can make it quite challenging to build robust systems that focus on the development and operations sides. But we're going to dive into that and maybe take away some of the mystery surrounding this and talk about how we can bridge this gap. We have a great guest with us today, which is Greg Zagraba, and he's built his career around the intersection of technology and buyer establishment in the IT sector. He's got various experience spanning different products and software development and has particular interest in enterprise data management. His approach emphasizes on understanding the customer's need and guiding them towards effective solutions. Now, Greg is currently working at GitProtect, and he's focusing on the evolving landscape of data security for DevOps. So the perfect person to bring into the conversation today. So Greg, thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
Hello, Mackenzie. Hello, Dwayne. Hello, everybody. It's a true pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you here. Yeah, I want to start off at a high level. Now, we have lots of people that listen to this podcast. Some of them are developers. Some of them are in application security. Some of them are in security. Some of them are in DevOps. And some of them, like my mum, are just listening here because they're trying to support us. But can we start? Let's just start by talking about what is DevOps. What are we talking about when referring to DevOps?
Okay, so before I'm going to jump into the answer, just to mention one thing, because I'm working directly with end customers, I have tendency to take difficult things and make it very simple, and I'll do the same with the DevOps definition. So DevOps is just a set of practices, principles that we agree upon in the software development team and its ecosystem to streamline and integrate the whole process of developing application, testing, and then releasing it to make sure that the quality of collaboration and the quality of end product is sufficient. And that's the main principle around it. But obviously, around that main principle, we build onto it lots of tools around automation, procedures, communication, and so on. And today, when we say DevOps, many people don't think about the whole process, which is typically visualized in this infinity symbol, but they think, okay, DevOps is GitHub, DevOps is Jira, DevOps is GitLab, DevOps is where I work. But this is only a tool which is used to manage the whole process from gathering product requirements, from defining what product or functionality should be, throughout all the stages of development, testing, releasing, in the process, which is also called continuous integration, continuous delivery. CI/CD is kind of a huge keyword in DevOps.
I always like the definition that it's all about the communication channel and how to shorten up that communication loop of getting feedback immediately on will this work, an operational side of it, and how do we improve it so it will work in the operational side and make that continual improvement of that DevOps infinity symbol we always see.
Yeah. And I also think that DevOps has evolved quite a lot from where it originated, because when it started, the roles in the software development team were kind of strict, and you started in one place, finished in the other. But right now, with this whole startup mindset and kind of hustler policies in the companies, I would say, so mindset that, okay, I'm also involved in the other parts of the process, the DevOps is also becoming more natural thing, because for us, especially in more agile organizations, it's more natural that we communicate better or that we have certain methodologies in working together, even if we are not calling it DevOps officially.
Let's dive into the conversation from a security point now. Can you kind of highlight any trends or emerging challenges that the DevOps teams face when it comes to security? And let's put a focus on, what's happening currently. What have we seen over the last, year? There's been this industry moves so fast, right? But, what are the challenges with bringing together these DevOps teams and the security teams?
Mm-hmm. So the number one challenge is what you mentioned. So bringing DevOps team and security team together, because right now, the security teams, especially in large organizations, are imagined as this big bad guy with a long stick who comes over and makes my life more difficult because they are telling about compliance, they are telling about preventing incidents and all those things, which from the developer's perspective, from perspective of somebody who is only responsible for the small chunk of a process, are just adding him extra work and adding extra steps for him. So the first thing that is changing now in the industry, and I wouldn't call it a trend, but I would call it more on a trend in the discussion, is kind of, first of all, something called DevSecOps, which is kind of an idea when we put security as the part of this whole process. So it's not like, okay, we have development operations and this infinite cycle that we're running into, and then security comes in and ruins everything we've built. We're making security integral part of it. And here also comes the initiative which is called Shift Left, which is supposed to encourage DevOps professionals to start including all those processes around security, about the quality of code, as early in the process as possible, so that when we are thinking about the feature that we want to produce, we also start thinking, okay, how we make it secure. Because nowadays, we still very often see the scenario when everything is done and dusted, we've done quality checks on the functional level, and then security teams comes in, and we go back to the drawing board because of their feedback.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next real question I had. And it's easy to say, yes, throw the word sec in the middle of DevSecOps or DevOps, and we got DevSecOps now. Shift left. We all know what direction left is, but how do companies go around finding this balance? Like, what's the right tone of, like, everybody's got 1,000 tickets to close. Everybody's got more pressure than ever to make things happen faster, especially in an AI assisted world. How do we strike that balance of security that's not blocking, yet also doesn't make us insecure as we go toward production?
Okay, so the first thing I believe in is automation. Because why people hate security and security initiatives? Because they typically bring them extra work. So what we need to do is to figure out what can we do so that they have less work and effectively they can care more on those fine details that typically matter in the security. So first of all, the whole automation of processes in the CI/CD, automation of processes in DevOps is important, especially automated testing, because typically those security initiatives mean more work for the quality assurance team. So if we are able to implement something that streamlines the whole work and helps us, for example, review code in more streamlined way, that means less manual work for the team. That's benefit number one. Second thing is changing the mindset of the team. And I can say that, okay, changing the mindset is another buzzword, but mindset is changed really by showing them other real life scenarios that make or break the security. And actually, if we come back to the largest incidents when we had the data leaks because of the mistakes in the DevOps process, like we had Equinox in 2017, or we had Capital One in 2019, everybody later on said, okay, if those people would be better in software development and software quality testing, they would save so much money, so much stress, and trust to their brand. And the problem I see, especially in enterprises, is that the whole DevOps team, developers, research and development, are completely disconnected from the business as a whole. And okay, we can say that, okay, it was like this maybe 10 years ago, but now it's different. But we can say now it's different in smaller, more agile organizations. But if you're working at another investment bank, at another large insurance company, those things are completely disconnected. And you're not thinking that, okay, security is not only marking a checkbox of a guy who is nagging me, it's also about, okay, trust to the company I'm working at and company that pays me my paycheck every month.
You touched on a lot of things there, right from at the start, you're talking about automation, but by the end of it, you were really talking about culture. I feel like that throughout the whole process. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into culture now, because it's a good segue. DevSecOps, or introducing security into the DevOps things, it's going to require a culture shift, because as you mentioned at the start, the security teams, they're known as the guys with the sticks, right? So, how do you change the culture? Now, we talked about agile, smaller startups. It's easy to introduce security culture into them from the beginning. But what about larger organizations? How have you seen, with your experience, people change the security culture? Because it can feel like you're trying to turn around a cargo ship in a parking lot sometimes when these big organizations, when you try and shift their culture.
So thing number one, switch stick for a carrot, because it's easy to punish people when they are not producing the right quality of code, right quality of application that meets all those security standards. But if you're doing your job well and you're doing that, it's rare to hear, yes, you're doing a great job. We appreciate that you're doing that. And I think that this is something that startups do better because they are smaller teams and they are more also human-centric teams. They are also more focused on appreciating when somebody delivers a good quality of work. So the first thing I would recommend everybody who's working in security, try thinking about, okay, maybe I've seen recently somebody, for example, doing astonishing work with testing. Maybe somebody spotted some issue in the development process that we managed to fix. Maybe somebody proposed something early in the development process that was security conscious. In case like this, really appreciate those people and don't be afraid to make shout out for them in Slack or Microsoft Teams and make it public, like this person is doing a good job, because they really care about security in the process. Because then you stop being guy with a stick and a checklist. You also start being a person that really appreciates this effort in the team. And when you see somebody else being praised, 99% of people are going to think back in their head, okay, I also want to be praised. It's nice to have a shout out on Slack that I'm doing an awesome job. So that's the thing number one. The second thing is obviously promoting the security in the company. I can say again, various trainings, workshops, use cases, but this is another challenge of being an educator and security advocate in a company, that it's not about, just having another mandatory workshop for everybody when you say about you should do this and you shouldn't do this and nagging people, but think about, okay, how can I make this whole education effort in my company more interesting? And, there are those small people in security, which are, they are nuances in the overall security process, but they grab people's attention. Like, from my experience, when it comes to security, people love to hear about social engineering, which is important from the security standpoint. Otherwise, it's slightly less important from this DevSecOps perspective, but people love to hear the stories about social engineering and how it helped in certain, let's say, ransomware attack. So use those hooks like this to grab people's attention into overall security topic in the company. And the last but not least, you need to be on top of what's happening in the teams, and you need to be in touch with the DevOps organization, with developers and so on. So I think it's also important on the security professionals at companies to get out of your office sometimes and go to the stand-up with the team, speak with them, see what they are working on, be involved in this DevOps process, because once you are doing that on the first line of the code development, you're going to see the things that you cannot see from your comfortable chair in your office.
Totally makes sense. We love the idea of like that groundswell up. The true meaning of shift left is let's move it earlier in the process, get everyone involved, automate the testing. But there is one stick that you're not going to be able to replace with a carrot out there, and that is that external stick of regulatory compliance. As we all know,
stick. That's a big horrible stick.
And they can't lure us and say, oh, you've done a good job of compliance here and you should be happy. That totally makes sense on a personal level, and I love that motion. But we still have to deal with the regulatory compliances and how they're constantly shifting. So how does that work into this model?
So the thing that I found really amazing, and I even see that in GitProtect, where I'm working right now, is treating external auditor as a common enemy. And it may sound awful, but when it really brings all the people together, like, okay, what we can do to pass this audit again? How can I help other people to make this process working? And how it's done? By having everybody celebrate the fact that we passed an audit, the fact that we passed a pen test. And in GitProtect, where I'm working right now, sales is celebrating when we pass the pen test. Marketing is announcing that everywhere. Product is happy. Security is happy. Research and development is happy, because we all know that, okay, it makes our company better. It brings us more trust from our customers. We're going to close more deals as a sales. We're going to have something to shout about in our marketing channels, which is actually relevant for our customers. It's not another generic social media post. We're going to have security giving us a little bit of break for the next year until the next audit comes. So having that perception that, okay, this is our common enemy that we're fighting with the external auditor, and everybody celebrates when it's done, it also makes people who are responsible for it in the development process feel a little bit more like a superhero. Okay, I need to put a little extra effort in my work to make everybody celebrate and everybody happy. Because if, God forbid, we fail the audit, nobody's going to celebrate. Everybody's going to be frustrated. We're going to lose a bunch of deals. Marketing is going to post another boring post on our social media. Everything goes down. So I think having this mindset, like I'm part of the bigger picture as a company, is relevant here.
You've said that you work for GitProtect a couple of times, and I just wanted to ask you, what does GitProtect specialize in? What do they do, and how does it fit into kind of the conversation around DevOps and security?
Thanks a lot for that question. I would say that what GitProtect does, it brings you this ground level security for the worst possible scenario, because what we do, we bring the backup and disaster recovery solution for DevOps specifically, meaning that your DevOps infrastructure, your GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Jira can be backed up securely with data fragmentation and encryption, so you are safe from ransomware as well. And it's not only about the source code, it's also about all the metadata around it. So I would say that if you are starting to think in your DevOps organization about security today, and you're thinking that, okay, doing a big thing, audits and changing mindset of people might be quite a lot, or it sounds overwhelming, the best thing to start with is with the backup. Because even if you fail in anything else with security or related to security, you can rewind the time and you can come back to the point when, okay, we've done a backup, we do backups daily or weekly. I always recommend to have them done daily, no matter how the big infrastructure is. And you can say at the end of the day, even if there is some struggle, we had some issue, we had outage, we've lost the data, angry employee deleted something by accident, or not by accident because they were angry. At the end of the day, you always have solutions that can save you from that. So GitProtect basically brings this ground level security to companies. And I recommend asking yourself today, do I have backup? And am I able to restore the data quickly enough? Because that saves you from all those issues. And this is the ultimate war scenario.
You're so thankful that you have a backup when you need it. This is
Exactly.
it's not quite the same, but one of the best purchases I've ever made, not this microphone, but I have another microphone that I travel with. It's a Rode wireless one, and it has internal memory. And the amount of times where I forgot to connect the right microphone, or I've hit record and I've lost all my audio, the fact that has a backup, this saves my life. And I think it's going to be the same for much more important for your resources, for everything, is that when you have it, oh, you'll be so pleased about it. But I want to drill down into a little bit of the nitty-gritties.
Okay.
Now, I want to know, so with DevSecOps, we're introducing the security team. We're trying to detect threats. This is early in the process. Yeah. This is the whole thing. Part of that is changing the culture. Part of that is celebrating security to get into that. But part of it is also being able to detect threats.
Yeah.
So how can people detect and monitor threats, in their pipelines, in their repositories?
So at the end of the day, in my opinion, nowadays it's a matter of bringing in appropriate toolset for doing that. It's about having security monitoring in your pipelines that you have in your DevOps platform, in your GitHub, It's about having anomaly detection system that identifies suspicious activity. It's about having security scanning tools for code, like for example, GitGuardian has amazing tool for that. So having all these different tool set that brings you and help you doing that, because at the end of the day, you can introduce, for example, process of making code review, and this is important. But nowadays we have all the different tools that we can bring into organization to streamline this process. But another different thing, and I'm going to touch now this from different angle, is that you cannot entirely trust those tools. Not meaning here GitGuardian, but looking at the bigger picture, at the picture of all those DevOps platforms that we're using, like GitHub, GitLab, Jira, etc. The problem with them is that they are not entirely supporting you in those security efforts as you would imagine. They give you the right tool set, like GitLab is now promoting quite a lot their DevSecOps tool in their platform. But at the end of the day, they also have something called shared responsibility model. When they are saying, okay, you're making all the efforts to keep your data safe, you do your code scanning, you maintain the quality of code, but the platform when you are keeping it is not responsible for protection of this data. You are responsible for it. So if we have an outage, if we have ransomware attack, if we have critical vulnerability that makes you lose access to your account, we are not taking full responsibility for that. Like, okay, you can sue us, but in our terms of service, it is clearly stated that we are not taking responsibility for that. And it might seem like I'm now telling just a little bit of scary stories, but just last week, GitLab admitted that they had massive vulnerability, 10 out of 10 on CVSS scale, in which you could have taken over anybody's GitLab account completely. And they terminated our open authorization application connections because of that, etc. And you can imagine, okay, I maintain my quality of code, I'm trying to stay secure, I'm paying lots of money for the platform that is supposed to enable me that with all the pipelines, with all the vulnerability scanning and everything that's built in platforms like GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. But at the end of the day, you cannot trust them completely either.
Yeah, we really that's the whole thing with security. We moved from this trust, then verify, to now verify again, trust for 15 minutes, and then verify again, which is the literally the zero trust model is being applied to everything. We've been talking theory up till now, and I love everything you've said. We're in agreement with you on, like, we got to shift left. We got to make this more of a conversation, make it about the communications. But can you share some real world examples of this? Do you have any like DevOps organizations you can point to and say they're doing data security correctly?
Oh, there is one organization that I love, and I'm going to do a little bit of self-promotion of Poland, where I come from, and a company called NetGuru, which is one of the largest independent software vendors in Europe. Independent software vendor practically being software house. But they are the company that, first of all, they put a lot of effort in their overall process on design of products and making them usable. So you could imagine that, okay, they're all about making the product, making the customer happy and giving the best quality of the product. And you could say, okay, that sounds like a space in which you could compromise the security. Because at the end of the day, you are working for third-party customer, for a customer. It's not your own product. The risk is not on you. The compliance is not probably as heavy as you would be doing your own product for your own company. But still, at the same time, they are maintaining the great quality of it. And the way they did it, their security manager that was brought in by the company, David, I had the pleasure of meeting him, wonderful guy. He really sat down with all the stakeholders in the research and development team, and they discussed, okay, what do you guys think that you're neglecting right now? What are the areas of the improvement? And this is the good example of this low level, okay, I'm going to meet with the developers, I'm going to have a chat with them, I'm going to see what we can do better. And then started thinking, okay, here we can improve this. Here we can have backup of our GitHub repos. Here we can have backup of our Jira. Here we can have some extra automation processes in our testing to improve the overall quality. So it's about going down and seeing what can be done here. And this is what I really appreciate in NetGuru as a company.
Shout out to Poland. I've been there a couple of times, and I I do love it. And it's one of those places where it's the tech culture in Poland is really starting to take off.
Mm-hmm.
But let's have a look now to people that may be working in DevOps professionals. This is an area that moves quickly. I'm sure we can all agree on that. These terms that we're talking about, they are a few years old, and there's new ones now. And I'm having fights with people about new acronyms on Twitter at the moment. But to keep up with all the new developments, with all the trends, with the latest things, it's like a fire hose out there. Do you have any recommendations for DevOps professionals who want to stay informed about the latest, the best practices? What's evolving in this very fluid area and space and security?
So first thing first, listen to the Security Repo Podcast.
Of course. You're doing one thing right already if you've made it this far.
We do try to be a good resource. We really do.
Yeah. But the first thing I'm always a huge fan of is attending all the different security conferences, events, and webinars that are happening, or even the physical events in your area. I really appreciate GitLab for their efforts that they've done last year with their DevSecOps World Tour, when they traveled all around the world, and they have been talking about, okay, what changes we are seeing in the DevOps processes based on our customers and how they're acting, and how we are reacting to that with the changes to our product. So I think, if you're talking to people who are working there at source, that's important. The second thing is not being scared to learn, because as you've said, Mackenzie, the things are changing rapidly. It's hard to stay on top. So all the different guidebooks, ebooks, webinars, podcasts on the topic are important, especially that right now we have this huge new thing with AI and machine learning. And I hate it. I always hate bringing up machine learning into the topic, because I believe it's too much of a buzzword right now and just keyword that we throw left, right, and center. But we can't hide the fact that we have it now in place brings extra risks to the overall process, because people already started saying, okay, if you have all those nice tools brought to you by DevOps platforms like GitHub Copilot, they increase quality of your work maybe, or they increase efficiency of your work definitely. But at the end of the day, if something is built by AI, probably it can be easily cracked by AI as well. And, those are those kind of nuances that, even I'm not able to say, okay, what to do. Like, be aware and see what the professionals are saying on the topic. And, if you want to start from the ground up, I would recommend, for example, thinking about the small things that you can do in the process, like, for example, introducing backup of your repositories and all the metadata. Like, okay, this is one of the best ways you can actually think about protection of your data, because in the worst case scenario, even if everything goes south, you have a backup that you can rely on somewhere on your cloud storage or somewhere on your physical storage. So conferences, education on all the resources, and think about the small initiatives that you can start doing right now, so that even if you're not catch up with some completely new risk, you are still protected on this ground level.
That's really good insights. I know I personally have learned the most about security from conferences and going to sessions that I probably wouldn't have tuned into on YouTube. They didn't feel like they would be really in my wheelhouse, but it's like, I'm already at the conference, already here. It's the most interesting thing on the schedule at that point, and I walk away with a whole new appreciation for a segment of security. So I'd encourage everyone out there to go to your local conferences, go to your local meetups. Even if you're like, I don't know if this is in my wheelhouse, I don't know if this is something I I'm going to focus on. I encourage everyone to go. The other thing I like you said in there around AI machine learning. I was just listening to DJ Ware. He's one of my favorite YouTubers. Talks about open source technology and operating systems. And he said something really interesting the other day, that his biggest fear with machine learning is that right now it's working in his favor and it's serving his needs, but he sees a future where he's going to have to change his work patterns to work for that paradigm and work for the machine's needs. And that really makes him uncomfortable. And I think DevOps has one of my fears with the future of DevOps is that we're going to fall into that trap of like, we're trying to jump through hurdles that we're not even making those hurdles ourselves, so we can get to a better overall future. But that's a dystopian future. That's Terminator 2 kind of future where Los Angeles blows up. But let's talk predictions. You're well informed in this space. And we're not going to hold you to it. We're not going to bring you back in a year and say you were wrong. But looking in the future, what are the big trends you think are going to affect DevSecOps that people should be aware of, especially our audience here listening for security reasons?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so obviously putting aside the elephant in the room, so AI and machine learning, the another huge thing is building cloud-native applications with microservices and the whole containerization, for example, using Docker or Kubernetes. Because this way we are changing the way we are developing the software. We are building our applications from scratch, and then there are new security practices that we need to employ. And I believe that while there was a point in time, like almost 2 years ago, when everybody switched to containers straight away, everybody went Docker, or everybody went Kubernetes, but the security practices did not necessarily catch up to that yet, or they are still catching up. So, having things like, for example, role-based access control in Kubernetes, or having appropriate network policies in pod-to-pod communication, they are really important here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the role-based authentication in so many different levels is I think that's going to be a big one, and it's surprising where it's missing. In these technologies, and a lot of it is because some of the stuff is really at the cutting edge. It's hard. Look, it's been a really insightful episode. I've absolutely loved it, but we're coming to the end, and I like to play a game with everyone. When we get to the end of this, it's called Best and Worst, and I want to ask you, what is the best security advice that you would give someone? And then I'm going to ask you another question, which is, what is the worst security advice that you've ever heard? So let's start with the best. What's the best security advice that you would give someone?
So the best security advice that I would give someone, and this is the advice I got from a lawyer, and this lawyer is my sister. Once I was a very young boy, my sister is 16 years older than me, so there is a huge gap between us. She told me that when you are writing down a contract, you are not preparing for peace, but you are preparing for war. And I think that the same thing applies for all the security policies that you're implementing and all the security best practices. If you are working on them, you are not working on scenarios when, okay, everything is going to be fine, we're going to live in peace, nobody is going to look at us, our hackers are going to go to sleep today. But if you are thinking about your security, think about the total sum of all the worst things that can happen in one day, and think how you can be protected from those. And when it comes to the worst advice, when it comes to the security I think that it was also in my young age, writing down passwords in the notebook. It's a trivial thing, but back in Poland, as you mentioned, Poland is now booming in terms of technology, but we also have still, the foundation of the companies who are led by people who are not tech savvy, and it's nothing unusual to have, company IT secrets written down in a notebook, and password manager is a fiction.
Yeah. Do you know on Amazon you could still buy password pads with pads that have,
Really?
like password. Oh, they're everywhere. Like they're
Oh
it's
boy.
yeah, that's the original secrets manager.
I have
But
literally yesterday had a friend tell me she was having problems getting into her home machine, into her network on her home machine. Her she just started a new job, work network on her home machine, because she lost the little piece of paper they gave her with the password on it.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Literally,
oh man,
this is still happening out there. Like, we can think
yeah.
MFA, everybody should just be MFA using password managers. Nope. Where the rubber meets the road, most people are still writing them down.
So another good advice that I got, it was at my first job in IT.
Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. It's been really insightful and a really valuable episode. And I'm sure our listeners will agree. That the final thing I want to ask you is if people want to kind of maybe follow you or learn more about GitProtect or what's happening there. What's some resources, or where can people follow you on social media, for example?
Okay, so first of all, if you'd like to get in touch, if you'd like to nag me with some questions, I'm always happy to help. You can find me on LinkedIn, Gregory Zagraba or G Zagraba. And when it comes to resources, you've asked me before, when can you learn? And if you're looking for resources like this, I invite you to our website, GitProtect.io. We have free ebooks and checklists for the DevOps data security, especially in the context of backup. So do I have a backup? Is it sufficient enough? Am I prepared for all the scenarios that can happen? So if you're looking for knowledge on how to prepare for war in terms of the data that you can lose and how to protect it, GitProtect.io. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Amazing. Well, thanks again, Greg, and we hope to have you on the podcast again soon.
Thank you very much, Mackenzie. Thank you, Dwayne. It was a pleasure talking.